Welcome to the video for Biology Paper 2, Variation and Evolution. I'm going to split this one into two videos just because it's quite a long topic. So, starting off then with variation over at the top here. What variation is in a generalised sense, it's differences in characteristics of individuals in a population. And so this can be due to a variety of different things, but primarily it's due to differences in genes, so the genes inherited from parents, differences in the conditions in which they have developed, so actual environmental causes and their effects on the variation. And the third one is a combination of genes and the environment. So there's lots of different examples of things that are just genetic, or just environmental, or actually just both, okay? So quite often as well with the genetic thing, occasionally mutations can actually lead to the development of a new phenotype as well. So that's how variation can arise within populations of organisms. So, moving on then to evolution. Evolution is a change in the characteristics of a population over time through a process of natural selection, which may result in the formation of a new species. So this underpins kind of how everything has developed, all living things have developed on Earth as a result of evolution. Starting off as kind of simple life forms like bacteria and then evolving into lots of different species over the process of billions of years. So natural selection then, which is kind of the theory that underpins this idea of evolution or explains it, was developed by Charles Darwin. And what natural selection involves is it's a few different steps really that summarise what natural selection is about. So initially, due to differences in genes, individuals may show variation in their phenotype. So within any species or any population there will be variation. For humans, example, it would be things like different hair colour, eye colour, different height, and things like that. That is examples of variation. So variation will exist. Individuals with characteristics best suited to their environment are more likely to survive. These individuals therefore are more likely to reproduce, and when they reproduce, the beneficial genes are going to be passed on to their offspring. Okay, so that's kind of the four different steps. A new species then is formed technically when two populations of one species become so different that they can no longer interbreed to produce fertile offspring. So that kind of just goes in line with the fact that to actually define a species, it's when organisms can reproduce to produce fertile offspring. So the point at which they're no longer the same species is when they can't actually breed together to produce fertile offspring. So, next thing we need to think about then is where all this evidence for evolution has come from, because it's quite well understood now. There's lots of evidence to back up natural selection and that kind of underpinning evolution. So our evidence for it comes from a variety of things, but primarily we can break it down into evidence from fossils and evidence from antibiotic resistance as kind of an example of evolution by natural selection. So thinking about fossils first then. Fossils are the remains of organisms from millions of years ago, which are found in rocks. The reason fossils tend to form is from hard parts which have not decayed. So, for instance, shells and kind of exoskeletons and things like that are quite often turned into fossils because they're hard. They take a long, long time to break down. Fossils can often be formed also from parts of organisms that are replaced by minerals during decay. So as they actually decay, and if it's slow because the conditions are right, the minerals can come in and replace them and kind of create like almost a mould of what was the living organism. And the third one is preserved traces, which is things like footprints that actually then get preserved and then later kind of uncovered, and there's those footprints left in the rock. For resistant bacteria then, the reason this provides us with evidence for evolution is because it's an example of natural selection happening, but on a very short time frame. Okay, whereas with lots of things, natural selection takes millions and billions of years. For bacteria, it's a very short time frame. So what we mean by this is that bacteria evolve really rapidly because they can reproduce quickly. Mutations then lead to the production of resistant strains that evolve via natural selection. So, for example, a good example of this is kind of the evolution of MRSA bacteria. So they are now pretty much resistant to most types of antibiotic, if not all. And the reason that has developed is because of the use of antibiotics and the fact that they can evolve really rapidly. The ones with resistance genes, just by chance, due to variation and mutation, survive, reproduce, pass on those genes, and then over, a period of time, you end up with the whole set of MRSA bacteria being a strain that has resistance genes. So, the way we're trying to combat this at the minute, because it is a massive problem that kind of the healthcare industry faces, is by controlling the use of antibiotics and making sure that we're trying to only use them for bacterial infections, only use them if they're really required, and make sure we complete the full course and things like that. Those rules will help us to slow the rate of bacterial evolution. Okay. Final bit for this little video is just a brief bit on extinction. So we just need to really know kind of what it is in a generalized sense. And what extinction is it's when there's no living individuals of a species remaining. Causes of extinction include things like deforestation, various human activities such as poaching, hunting, overfishing, those kinds of things. Okay, so that's it for part 1 of variation and evolution. Part 2 will contain the other things.